This is Too Long for a Voice Note, a podcast about everything and nothing at the same time, presented by Claire
and Enzo. Our podcast is produced in London. Some conversations are just too long for a voice note.
Hi, she's Claire.
And he's Enzo.
And this is Too Long for a Voice Note.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to
back.
A new episode of
We're here
Too Long for a Voice Note.
How are you doing, love?
Thank you very much, love. How are you
I'm
doing?
fine.
They're like,
fine
everything is fine.
dandy.
And
I was trying to think of something that we could speak about that we haven't spoken about yet.
You know what I can speak about at the beginning of this episode?
What?
About what you're listening right now. I want
Oh,
to know.
I love that
I want
question.
to know what is your playlist at the moment, or what you're liking at the moment.
Okay.
Maybe someone will like it. But also, by the way, welcome. If it's the first time
Oh,
you're
yeah,
here,
that as well,
you
yeah.
can follow us. You know, they will be like, "Who are these two? Why they're like being so
Who are
aggressive on
they?
our topics?" Yes, it's our podcast. You can follow us, please. Like, you know,
Like, subscribe,
everywhere
comments.
you follow things. Thank you for being
Yeah.
here and watching and like the video.
We're everywhere.
And now, what are you listening now?
What am I
Claire?
listening to? Well, I will be honest that I'm absolutely sure my most loved album of the year is definitely Motomami.
Yeah.
I'm still loving that.
We know.
So much depth in that album.
Yeah.
But a new song that I have also really been liking is, which I shared with you, the music video for it, is Anderson .Paak and Kai Tunda.
Kaitranda.
Kai
I think
Tunda.
it is.
He's a Canadian DJ. Anderson .Paak is an American singer.
It's really good.
They did
Producer
a
as well.
collab, a second collab, and I love that song. It's called
It
Twin
sounds really-
Flame.
It's really, really good.
Oh, it's so good, right?
Yeah,
And
it's
the
really
video,
amazing.
I really
I haven't watched the
found-
video.
You haven't watched the video? Oh,
need to
it's
watch
so
it.
creative. I'm
Yeah.
gonna like link it in the description, but it's
Yeah.
like black and white. It's very simple. They're kind of like on this like glass thing, kind of. I mean, it's really
Cool.
great.
Really amazing,
great.
yeah,
Also, Childish Gambino dropped a new song which I really liked.
Really?
It's
Like
really
today?
really cute. No, last week he
Oh,
dropped
yeah,
it.
I think I haven't checked music the last week, by the way.
Patiently waiting for Frank Ocean's album.
Right? It should come back.
Hopefully
soon, right?
Yeah.
That's cool.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that kind of stuff. How
That's
about
nice.
you?
I've been listening. Well, I think this last week I haven't been listening nothing like, because I create like a
Yeah.
monthly playlist. If someone interested in that, I can share it with you guys. With a lot of things that make kind of my
Yeah,
attention during the
yeah.
month. But I think lately I've been paying attention to. I pay attention to the Beyonce album.
Oh, the Beyonce album is so good.
Beyonce.
Yeah,
Why can I
yeah.
pronounce her name? Beyonce.
Beyonce.
album
Renaissance.
or Renaissance.
Renaissance.
album.
Again, yeah, same.
Yeah,
Same.
there's some cool songs.
What ones
there.
are your favourite on the Beyonce album?
I think I like Coffee It Off.
Cuff It.
Cuff It. Right, it's Cuff It.
It's
Yeah.
like
I think I'm falling in love. Na, 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 na. It's a little bit of controversy around the album, but let's not go into details at
Yeah.
the moment. But yeah, I really like some songs of the album. I think it has a
Beyonce,
really like a cool vibe to it.
yeah.
And I think that I've been listening like, well, Rosalia, you know, the typical. She has a new song that it's everywhere. Despecha. It will be like, what song is that? Yeah.
We're seeing her in
Yeah.
December, and it's going to be
Yes,
a lot
can
of energy.
wait. So yeah, that's been like what I've been listening to.
Yeah.
Really cool.
One thing I have to say
Yeah.
is I feel like, well, obviously it's Beyonce, but I feel like Renaissance is extremely well produced.
Really, yeah.
The way that
Very
album,
detailed.
I mean, of
Yeah.
course we know Beyonce is a complete perfectionist. She's
Yeah.
amazing, but it's like, wow.
Yeah.
The production
I
on
think,
the album.
I think the production is mental. The team behind it and everyone included in the album, I think they did a great job. So
Yeah, I really like
cool.
how she celebrates black culture as well.
Yeah.
There's so many references in there. She's so
Yeah, yeah,
intelligent
yeah.
and amazing.
Anyway, I think this
Well,
week this is my week for my
It
topic,
is,
right?
yeah.
So this is time for Enzo's secret topic of the week. So, Claire,
Enzo.
I was thinking about something to talk about with you, and I'm like, something to talk about with you, something I found interesting lately, and I don't know if you. Well, first of all, I think it's not related to our last topic, which is about Instagram Be Real and social media, but there's a bit of that there, and I think my topic, it has like two layers, and the first layer is about like how language in social media kind of like is shaping culture and how we express and we feel things in a way. This is coming because I feel like there's a lot of trends that are happening all the time of the word, how you use words or how you describe emotions and feelings, and we kind of like use this language from social media to express things, kind of like POV, which is point of view, or like now everyone uses trigger because trigger is like a fun thing to say now, which is something like really is actually like a medical terminology for things, and blah blah blah. And it's not like it's good or bad. I just find interesting how we change how language always adapts to the reality and it's always changing. But I found how interesting how social media language are really like setting the rhythm or something, how we express ourselves.
Yeah.
And I found interesting how lately, I don't know if you've seen, lately, it's been for a while, this trend of, I think especially it's starting Twitter, because, Twitter always the trend starts there, about red flags.
Yeah.
And how when something is a red flag, and that created like something new, there's also green flags.
Yeah.
And I was like reading about this on the internet, and they was talking about how like the metaphor of talking about green flags is kind of something that we don't use a lot, and it's kind of new, and it's kind of like a counterpart of the red flag, because we always use, that's a red flag, right? But then this new thing called green flag as well is when we pointed out things that are
good behaviors, kind of
right?
thing. Yeah.
So I found kind of interesting how like nowadays things like that, like people are defining things that they like or don't like about a person, a situation, or a place, or a relationship through something as simple as, that's a green flag, or like a red flag. And sometimes I wonder like how maybe we're simplifying things too much, and sometimes like feelings or realities or like situations that get too simplified, but it's because I guess social media is also about that, like how quick everything is. So I think like it's affecting the way we feel and we process things. I don't know. What do you think about it?
It's also about like media consumption, isn't it? Like I think you have to make a really big effort now to like seek out long form media, because like that's not what platforms prioritize. For example, like longer YouTube videos don't do as well, whereas YouTube used to be a platform for longer form videos. I don't think I think people probably watch less films now because they're quite long, and like
they're series now.
It's series which are short. The episodes are short,
20 minutes, and I was like boom,
because probably because it goes into like our attention span. It's like getting lower and lower and lower by the day. And like reading articles and stuff, you don't really read an article, and that's kind of the thing. I think like a lot of people are getting their education about a lot of things through like a little carousel on Instagram or a TikTok,
or something
like that. That's just,
carousels sometimes are very enlightening.
Or how you're getting your like news. I was thinking about the red flag, green flag thing that you mentioned, like because it's not necessarily a bad thing, right?
Not necessarily.
It's kind of putting that on the radar. It's basically giving somebody a word to describe a behavior that they don't like. But then, the problem is that you don't actually really understand probably what a red flag means, because a red flag, for example, isn't when somebody does something that you don't agree with. That's not a red flag, and like I think this is something you have to be very careful with social media, and in this way, for example, use the term triggered. That's a very specific thing. Somebody sharing a point of view that you don't like is not you being triggered. Like you have to be very careful.
It's a really, really good
and
point.
Like somebody, like a red flag is like I would say that probably like red flags are like quite consistent. And if you want to talk about red flags in dating, like they're probably quite like, you can say like these 5 things are probably red flags universally. Not like I don't like your Converse. That's not a red flag. That's a preference. And you need to be very careful with this kind of thing, because I think then this is a really bad side of social media, like everybody kind of becomes an expert in things, and you're not. You're not. Like therapists are an expert, or doctors are an expert, not you, us, even a photographer and a video editor. Like you're being triggered. Like, you know what I mean? Like you need to be very careful with that.
Definitely. Well, the episode's done. That's everything I wanted to hear, and I agree with all of that. So thank you guys for listening. No, literally, when we were talking, there's definitely all the things that I was thinking about, because especially with all these things, which you're right. I think it's a good thing how these situations, or saying, for example, something is a green flag or a red flag, it helped us to have this knowledge and maybe be more, put things on the radar.
Yeah.
And if you translate this to maybe like depression or mental health issues or like whatever it is, I think it makes easier and more accessible to people to understand things or to put name to what they're feeling or what they are. Like, I wouldn't have years ago the language to say, oh, something's a red flag or a green flag, you know, if I don't see on Twitter or on Instagram or the trend. But as you say, it's very like difficult, because then these things becomes a joke and a meme on social media. And that's where I think the problems, it can come. Like, when this terminology that can mean something really serious, it turns into a meme, then it starts kind of losing the actual like importance of it, or it may, because it's so ingrained on our language. And when you start seeing every single day things like jokes and things with red flag, green flags, trigger, things like that, I'm gonna be honest with you, you have seen trigger, we have kind of like being like ha 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 with the terminology triggered. That happened, that we were like, oh, because it turns into something that it can, I don't know, it kind of like becomes so common and people make so much fun out of it in a way that it start losing the meaning, what I was feeling. So I think it's a bit complicated. And about what you were saying about the green flags and red flag and what is or not. What I was reading about it, which is that I think it was very interesting, how we start to believe or think that everything is a red flag, for example. Or like everything like, oh, you're telling me that you don't like how I dress, it's a red flag. And it's kind of like, no, it's like, it's your taste. It's not, it doesn't sound like a red flag. But then I think social media at the moment with this particular thing, they're turning like into good and bad opinions and what you like and what you don't like. So I've seen things like, oh, the person doesn't like chicken, oh, red flag, you know. So it started becoming to that, which I understand social media is a lot of about a bit of, you need to have a tough skin and also like a bit of good humor to understand that. But I wonder like how this really affects our day by day in many ways, as you were saying, how these things like really change the way and the meaning of the words. Even I feel like sometimes things like, that's why I hear this sometimes, but people being like, oh, when you talk about, I don't know, race or homosexuality or things like that, how people goes like, oh, because it becomes so popular, people are like, oh, everyone is that kind of like, everyone wants to be correct, everyone wants to be inclusive, everyone wants to be blah, blah, blah. And it's a bit like, it's interesting how social media really, it's like shaping our language all the time and how we are reacting to it.
I get you, and it's kind of changing like how we're thinking as well, right? And like, I think it's kind of something that you said is like, I think we've been in this world for a really long time, but I feel it a lot more now, is that I think we live in a very polarized world, and it's like, you're either this or that. That's a red flag, that's a green flag, you're good, you're bad. And I think we've lost a lot of the room for understanding, and I don't know where that's come from. Because I would have felt with a freaking pandemic, we may have had more room for understanding, but I think we have less. I think we've become even worse somehow. And I think social media is really bad for that.
Sometimes social media can be so negative for us, and to, again, the way we feel and we express ourselves, and sometimes you can feel worse just by looking at social media. But there were like, especially making like a point on how this new trend of talking about also green flags is actually really positive, because we forget that everything has like kind of a balance, and also like how, if to know also to identify the green, let's talk about a relationship, to identify the green flag, the red flags of the relationship, you need to also know your green flags.
Exactly.
And that's something that we're not that, we try to be like, this is bad, and social media we're like, oh, this is all the red flag, but how, and I think that's the problem sometimes social media, the depth that we were mentioning before, how we know that's a red flag as well, because we need to know our green flags, and this is when this terminology that seems to be so easy kind of help us, right? And it's a thing that we're saying, like, for example, like you can compare your flags. This is kind of, again, language, like language and how things are changing at the moment. I find so fascinating, like, oh, you put in a list your red ones and your green ones, and you see how many of them you have, and then you know if that person is good for you, and you need to always revisit those flags and also see how many of which you have and how many of them they work for you or not, or how sometimes what's a red flag, which they were talking about the article you mentioned as well, like how sometimes something that person does is a red flag for you, but it's actually something that you don't like. It's not actually a red flag.
Yeah.
Like, because the person maybe likes to go to sleep at 9 p.m. It's like, oh, that's a red flag for me. Is it that really that? And that's how, like, this type of language thing modify a lot of the relationships as well, and how we feel.
It's funny because I remember one guy that I went on a date with that I really didn't like. I actually mentioned him already, that poor man, if he's watching. Not poor man, he wasn't very nice, but he didn't do anything bad.
You didn't really like him, right? It's been like name dropped 3 times on 3 different episodes.
I did not have an enjoyable date with him. Sure, he's a lovely person. We didn't vibe. Found him a bit sexist. There we go.
That's a red flag, for example.
That's a red flag for me, and it should be for most people. And you know, he was the one that said, doesn't everyone have a podcast? You remember? And he was a chef, and I was like, I can confess. You remember I literally was like, no. Anyway, to name drop this guy again, not to name names, but again, actually when we were messaging, we hadn't even met yet. Yeah. He was Italian, what a shock. And
it was a red flag, joking, but maybe sometimes it is. We're joking. For all of our Italian friends and Italian listeners, it's all out of love.
I said, oh, I'm half Italian. And he said, red flag. And I thought, right, this is weird. Like, that's that kind of like that thing about like making a list of like red flag and green flag. I have an issue with that.
What's your issue?
I have a list of things that I am looking for in a partner. I have a list of qualities that I will not tolerate because they don't align with my core values. If you're fucking racist, sexist, homophobic, whatever, then other things that are less on the list. But like, is that red flag or green flag? Like, I don't know.
Do you think for you it has a different interpretation because you have a more language to define how you feel and what do you feel? Maybe you're right. Yeah.
Because
it's what because this is what I'm getting from, again, the language, social media, red flags, green flag, or everything else that comes into like POV, trigger, everything of that. Like, I think like a lot of people, sadly, or because of reasons, or because maybe they're too young, or because social circumstances, or because how the world are, they have really like not enough language to talk, to express, to find themselves into a category that feel comfortable. So they kind of like, and not to be whatever. It's just not like, oh my God, we are like so literally we're enlightened. Yeah, we're enlightened, and we read so many books, and we are so above everyone. No, it's not about that. But I guess it's like, some people, they have less resources to find their self in a place that feel comfortable. And maybe because I found interesting that you say like, oh, I don't really like this green flag because I know what are the things that I like and I don't like and this and that. But I think it's because you have more of a language, or you have more of like a emotional intelligence and all of that, right?
Thank you, love. Yeah. And because I've had a shit ton of therapy.
Exactly. Like, thank you therapist, and thank you to all the money I paid for my therapist.
You're right. It's true. And but I think it's always that thing to kind of go back to like your initial point with social media and everything. It's like, and I don't think that this comes from resources. I think this is a choice. I think that you need to be mindful of the media you're consuming. Yeah. So if you know what I mean, like it's your choice to kind of like absorb that as like red flag, green flag, or like and not do anything further. Like there are things you can read, you can have conversations, you can blah blah blah. Like, I know you might not have people in your life, etc. like that, but there are ways to kind of like expand a bit. But maybe they're not. Maybe it's not that negative in a way, because maybe it's good that like some guy like flashes his dick and then somebody thinks like, oh, I saw this thing on Instagram, red flag. That's definitely a red flag.
You are so right.
Get me out of there.
You are so right.
You know, like, or maybe you like, I've had that, I'm sure you have. You just have a feeling and you think, no, this isn't right, but you don't have a word. Like, we so don't often have words for our feelings, but maybe it's just simple and you think red flag. Just something that not something that I don't like. You're something that doesn't fundamentally in my gut, it doesn't it's not aligned with me. You know that, so maybe it's not bad.
You're interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting point.
You're
interesting.
interesting.
You're interesting, Claire. You're like, oh, thank you. I thought I was, because when we have a podcast together. Sometimes you're interesting. No, that's interesting, because you're so right. I think sometimes, and kind of to wrap it up, this red flag, green flag, language, social media, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes it's true, like, we consume so much information nowadays, and there's so much out there, that sometimes I think we need things that are represented visually to kind of like have like, we got actually like, oh yeah, true. And that makes sense, because we consume so much, and life is so fast right now. We have so many videos and all the social media we were talking before. So sometimes a lot of things, they might slip in front of us really quickly, really fast, and really like, oh, without even realizing it. But I guess the positive side of these things is that maybe for some people, even us, that stays in our brain like something like, it's like, oh well, if you read at one point that, you know, if someone does this and that, it's a red flag because it's abusive, it may stay with you, and you'll be like, oh yeah, that's true. And then if it happens, we'll be like, that's a red flag.
I'm not putting up with that.
So it's kind of like tags. I feel like we are thinking like everything as tags nowadays, which is interesting.
How do you mean?
Like tagging stuff. Like red flag is a tag of things that are bad.
Yeah.
I think that's a language, and it must be like how social media works right now. Like keywords for everything. That's how we express things, which I don't know.
Which is good and bad, because it's like bite-sized information, but it is also bite-sized information. So there's probably no depth to it if you don't do your own research.
Which
but
is
then,
the point.
is it fundamental? I mean, again, it's like you can go round and round with these things all the time.
Like philosophy. I wonder. I guess, I don't know, for the young generation, it must be. I don't know. That's what I wonder for the youngest ones. How it work, maybe it will be good, because they think so fast that actually they need those resources.
Yeah, it's true.
Because maybe these things come from them as well, from really young people.
Definitely. I think as long as you're like having conversation, this is actually a really lovely conversation to have, because I think you don't really question these things. We just now use those terms. So it's good that you kind of raised it, because it's like, oh yeah, like that is now part of our dialogue. Everybody will know what you mean when you say a red flag of like our age or below, probably.
Exactly. But it's gonna, do we know actually?
Yeah.
But there's books now. That's why also I saw like they gave me the inspiration to talk about this. There's books called like The Biggest Red Flags. You know, it's part of a language now, and we kind of encapsulate everything in one thing. But yeah.
What's your biggest red flag and green flag, quickly?
I think my biggest red flag in a person, if it's the person, it's selfish.
Oh,
for
really?
For me, that's a red flag. I don't like selfish people. Or selfish behavior. I know we all have selfish behaviors, but if you display a selfish behavior, I would say like, oh, that's a red flag for me.
Such as like, what, anything?
Being maybe too only like in yourself, very like it's all about you. It's like, you know, self-centered, that type of like selfish, self-centered, all of this, that when the words kind of, it's yourself only.
Yeah. For
me, that's a red flag. It's like, it puts me up, and I think it's a bad quality in anyone, honestly.
Green flag?
And a green flag would be, I think definitely someone that's empathetic. I think if I see someone who has empathy, that for me is a green flag. But again, it's kind of like, is it a green flag? It's just because I like it, or maybe a green flag is just because I like it. You know what I mean?
It's
I guess
like
overall, it's a
that
green flag.
Vibes with you at the end of the day, like, or it's like it's a quality that you're looking for in a person. You know,
but you see, language. You will say like a quality I like looking in a person is empathy, versus green flag is empathy. You know, it's kind of like, wow, how we are sorting out everything so much.
Sure,
and for you, just to like, out of curiosity.
Red flag.
I think I know, by the way.
I don't like
red flag.
Red flag. I think it will too. I don't like meanness. Yeah. Meanness is a massive red flag for me, and also lying is a massive red flag for me.
Lying for you,
that's a no. But I don't like it when people are mean or like bullies or something like that. I think you've got fucking issues there, mate. And then a green flag will be, like green flag is like I like a good listener. I like it when people like really listen to what you're saying. I think that's
nice.
Rare and a good listener.
Like that. Yeah. Very nice.
Drop your thoughts in the comments.
If you think this episode is a red flag or a green flag, please let us know as well. Drop the flags if that's the case, because you know, like times in the month we're living in.
For sure.
But thank you for discussing this topic with me.
Yeah, this was really great, love.
Thank you.
Very interesting. I would love to know everybody's thoughts. Drop your red flag and your green flag below.
That would be really cool. I would be very interesting to know, because I think like it's good to kind of like always think the way we are thinking and living at the moment.
Yeah,
because
and what
it's
do these
changing.
terms mean to you as
Yes,
well?
yes.
For sure.
Thank you very much,
Well,
everyone.
yeah.
Thank
See
you
you
for
next
watching
week.
and see you.
Bye. Guys.